welcome back. For over 40 years, Safe Horizon is the largest not-for-profit victim services agency in the United States. The organization provides support, prevents violence, and promotes justice for victims of crime, abuse, and their families, as well as their communities. Joining me now, we're pleased to have the director at the Bronx Family Justice Center at Safe Horizon, Vilma Torres. And Vilma, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I appreciate you taking the time to really talk and highlight the work that we do at Safe Horizon.
Yes, and I know that when it comes to really dealing with victims and victims that can be of abuse and sometimes crime, as we said at the beginning of our segment, it can be a long road and a hard path. But I know for yourself and your organization, you do a great job of trying to make that road to recovery a whole lot easier.
Yeah, I so appreciate what you're highlighting, and you're really highlighting about the connection, especially in our communities, Daren, like to know where the resources are, such as the Bronx Family Justice Center, that people know they're not alone when they're experiencing harm and violence, that there's somebody there, whether it's someone you can pick up the phone and speak to someone in your language, that someone is honoring and respecting your gender and is saying, how can we be of support?
And so for somebody who may not be so familiar with the Family Justice Center, walk us through what occurs at the center.
Yes, so as a result of the pandemic and COVID, folks have two options, anyone who's impacted intimate partner violence, sex trafficking, human trafficking, family violence, or elder abuse can call. You can call the Bronx Family Justice Center and have an opportunity to speak with someone or leave a voicemail and someone will get back to you, or you can walk into the center. And what happens when you walk in is someone welcomes you. Someone is letting you know that you found the right place. Someone is there to engage you. You can provide your name, how you would prefer your pronouns, and really just have an opportunity to be in a safe waiting area where if someone can offer you some water, coffee, or tea. And that's always very surprising because someone looks around like, oh, you mean I can have coffee here? It's like, exactly. It's a warm, welcome setting. We know that folks that are walking through our centers have been impacted by violence, abuse, and they want the opportunity to speak to somebody in a very safe and confidential setting. That now I have an opportunity to speak with you. You're going to talk to me about confidentiality, and that's honored and respected, and listen to me, provide that empathy. That continuum of care is what we say as to what brings me to the center today. How have I experienced harm? And what are some of the resources available for me that could be of guidance to me, educating me. What happens if I start to go for an order of protection? What is that about? What's the difference between a criminal court order of protection? Or, I have questions about child custody and visitation. I have questions about my immigration status, and I have an opportunity now to speak to someone where you could speak to a case manager who's going to help you sort of navigate. What I mean by navigate is someone's going to start from the beginning to now. What's your priority right now? And it could be if someone is also looking for food resources. What are the food pantries in our communities?
Give me a little bit about right now as we talk about the timing, as we're navigating, many of us feel like we're coming out or getting out of COVID. But what's it been like for you? Have things been further exacerbated during COVID-19 in terms of the legal assistance that's been needed for families? Because I do know there have been so many people, thousands and thousands of New Yorkers who've been on the fringe.
Yeah, I think that's the key word. Sadly, because of the pandemic and the COVID, that people didn't know that the resources were still made available. So the value of having that phone interaction, if someone has questions about when people were experiencing evictions, where people didn't know about what their rights are, because what happens when I'm on a virtual call? What happens if I have questions about immigration, about child custody visitation? Those resources are still available. So someone is going to be picking up the phone and doing an introduction, explaining, well, what are the concerns or questions you have about what does child custody looks like? What does visitation looks like? What happens about that I don't have status in this country? And you know what that feels like? It feels like a lifeline, that someone is speaking to you in a very respectful, courteous manner. Perhaps if you have a language preference, someone speaking to you in Spanish or in French. But can you imagine what that feels like to be well informed? Now I know what my rights are. Now I can make choices, because before I didn't know. And now that I've become well informed, I can really make some safe choices about what are the next steps for me and my family.
Case management is huge, because in order for families to really fully get back on their feet, or a victim to really be able to navigate through this, having a case manager and having case management, really critical. Give me a little insight into your case management program and the impact that it's had.
Well, case management for me, as I'll say, it's that ear, it's that extra ear. So whether it's here at Safe Horizon, whether it's through our Safe Horizon Crime Victims Assistance Program at the police precincts, criminal court, family court, our domestic violence law project, or a 24-hour hotline. It is having that ear. You actually have someone that's listening to you, who checks in. Is this a safe number? Are you free and able to speak? What can we talk about? And maybe if it's not, you know what, right now I'm telling you it's not safe. How is that? I'm sharing like a code word. I'm going to tell you it got hot in here. And you know what, I got to pick up the kids from daycare. Now you're saying to me, okay, I'm going to hang up. And as your case manager, I can call you back where you're safe and able to speak. And it really is people joke, but it is having an extra pair of ears where someone is listening to you in a very courteous, respectful, non-judgmental manner, not telling you what to do, but hearing from you is, what are your priorities? What are the next steps?
And so for yourself, I know that you're very entrenched in a lot of different areas, and the organization's entrenched in a lot of different areas. Unfortunately, in our community, all too often we have to deal with the issue of homicide and those victims and those families. But I know that you also spend a lot of time assisting families of those who've been impacted by homicide and the grief that they share.
Yes, thank you so much for acknowledging that. It's actually coming up in September, National Day of Remembrance for Families of Murder Victims. And think about how the impact it has on our communities of where people are literally, how many times are you walking down the street and seeing RIP? How many times
Right.
are you hearing shots? How many times are you sharing with your child why there's still blood resonance in on our streets? And those are families. Those are what I say generations, because it becomes the past, the present, of the future. And I do appreciate the work that our organization is doing and helping someone with compensation, letting them know who the cleanup with the New York State Office of Victim Services Compensation. That's an altering experience. That's forever. And when you talk about the grief process, thank you so much for acknowledging that, because someone would say, oh, you know what, I'm going to help you at the funeral, I'm going to do this, but when the grief, the mourning continues for a lifetime. In the beginning, it's just dealing with that traumatic grief, which is the pain and heartache of witnessing, perhaps hearing the shots. Many times I hear from law enforcement that people are hearing death notifications on Facebook, on Instagram. They're not even speaking to the officer or the detectives at that time. So can you imagine someone already just saying, hey, RIP Vilma? What do you mean, Vilma? I just spoke to her this morning. What are you talking about? And that moment, that shock, the disbelief that your life has ended. So to your point, and thank you for highlighting that the grief and the mourning, it's forever, but you're dealing with the missingness of that person 5 years from now, 10 years from now. In the beginning, it's the traumatic grief, the reliving those intrusive thoughts, those images, working with systems, the criminal justice system. Who would think that I would be going to the medical examiner's office? Who would think that I'm burying my child, where that expression we hear from some parents is like, that's supposed to be them taking care of me, Vilma, not me burying my loved one, my son.
And it's very traumatic, and we know that. And so for a family, how long do you stay with them? I mean, you talk about a time period of, people just come and they go right after the funeral. How long has your organization been staying with families after that process?
Well, you made reference to when you said our organization has been around since 1978. Families of Homicide started in 1979. It is that connection now through our community programs, the Safe Horizon, through the advocacy work that are done in the crime victims assistance programs, our work through the district attorney's office and their crime victims assistance unit. It's lifelong. Many of our families stay in touch with us for National Victims' Rights Week. We talked about National Day of Remembrance coming up. I appreciate our organizations and the work that we're doing now about gun violence and prevention and educating. What are the signs and symptoms, to your point, when we're interacting with our communities, our children, our communities of color, where people are saying, well, this is an everyday thing that happens in the South Bronx. It's an everyday thing that happens in our country. But people sometimes will lay blame to it. So what was Vilma doing? Like kind of it has to be that Vilma was doing something that led to her murder.
Mhm.
No, it's not. You know what? I could just be walking down the street and waving to you in a moment, and all of a sudden my life has been ended. So that's why I appreciate what you say about the grief from the process. It really is acknowledging that, and and helping families, and that could be for as long as they want our resources and services.
Yeah. We got a couple of months coming up that we talked about before we went on camera. One is September, and you got some things happening in September. Talk about what's the highlight for September.
Well, yes. So when you mentioned families of murder victims, so National Day of Remembrance is coming up in September, but that's just one day. Every day is a National Day of Remembrance for families of murder victims. Come October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So that's why I so appreciate you're highlighting the work that we do at Safe Horizon with our partners and colleagues at the Family Justice Center, community programs, is letting people know that the doors are open, the calls are still being taken, or a hotline. Like if you need us, we're there for you. And I think that helps when you're dealing with isolation and stigma, and people forget that, that's a lifeline. And you know what? I appreciate you taking the time just to highlight this work and letting people know that you don't have to deal with your pain and your trauma alone. If we can be there to extend a helping hand, we're there.
Yeah. And as we look right now, we know that a lot of people are really struggling for services and really struggling to have a safe environment. It's a work in progress, right? To really be able to be with families and to help families, particularly navigate the legal system and the court system. Our guest earlier talked a little bit about the backlog of courts and how frustrating that could be for an individual or a family or somebody that's needing to get into the court system. What's it been like for you in terms of advocacy? Because I know that there's a lot of things that are still laying in abeyance in the court system. The advocacy component, are you optimistic with some of the things that we're talking about when it comes to victims' rights and survivors' rights that we'll see some soon change from government?
Yes, and thank you so much for highlighting victims' rights. Yes, that is key. We want to honor and respect our criminal justice system, that if I am accused, I want a fair trial. I want that my rights are protected and honored. Everybody has rights and choices. And it's important to know about victims' rights, about compensation. It saddens me when I hear that victims of crime are paying medical bills that they shouldn't be paying. To your point, that if I'm appearing in court, someone is giving me an opportunity to prepare myself. Working with the district attorney's office about cases. To me, I appreciate what you're highlighting is victims' rights. Let's not forget about rights and right of notification, right of compensation, right that someone to be heard, and a victim impact statement. If I've been harmed by as a crime victim, you as the court should know about my financial hardship. Guess what? I had to be out of work. Maybe I'm struggling now to pay my bills. I'm at risk for homelessness because I can't go back to work, because going back to work, I was sexually assaulted at the parking lot, and my office building is right next door to it. Think about what that experience is, walking past that parking lot and entering to go into my building right now. You mean I could get free counseling services? You mean someone is going to help me to get compensated because I was injured? That's all part of victims' rights. So I appreciate that you're talking about it, because it is part of our judicial process.
Yeah. Before we go, please let our viewers know how can they tap into the resources and the things that you have available through your organization.
Yes, thank you so much for asking. It's the great respect and honor that I have for our hotline staff, our advocates who are literally there 24/7. Our hotline number is the 1-800, which is 621-HOPE. Hope, Esperanza, it really is that key word of hope, Esperanza. And that is 1-800-621-4673, 1-800-621-4673. Because I know I'm part of the Bronx, that's my community, but what if somebody's looking for services in Staten Island, Brooklyn, Manhattan, Queens? Even, can you imagine people call our hotline from different states that are looking for services, because it is a 24-hour hotline number. So we'll get, someone say, hey, Vilma, can you help this family in Ohio? They're looking for these resources. You may know them. So it really is a lifeline. So thank you so much for highlighting it.
Yeah, and Vilma, I gotta thank you for being with us. That about ends our segment, but I want to thank you for the work that you're doing. And of course, as the months continue to go forward, hopefully we'll have an opportunity to bring you back and talk a little bit more and drill down in depth about some of the issues that are affecting these people who are great people, but sometimes find themselves on the other end needing some much needed services. Thanks so much.
Yeah, and maybe the word resilience, as you say. Yeah, there is hope.
Yes,
Thank you, and thank
resilience,
you for trying.
perseverance, hope, all of those words. Thank you much. And want our viewers to know, stay with us. We do have more here on the Social Justice Forum.